I'm going to call this meeting to order at 6:03. It is Tuesday, June the 9th, 2020. This is our regular business meeting. At this time, we are located in the Joanne Idolette Teacher Education Center. We are adhering to the CDC guidelines, and we still have a setup where we're trying to maintain at least 6 feet in between each of us. Here in the room right now, we have, to my left, Dr. Moore, Mrs. Justice, Mrs. Diagresta, Kristen Maddox will be helping with technology from a distance, and we have Brandon that is behind me that is with technology also. We have members that are sitting in the lobby that can actually see the meeting right now on one of our televisions that we have, and they will be called in during citizen input. And joining us through Teams, we have Dr. Schiff, Mrs. Rosario, and then we also have Mrs. Berenborg. At this time, board members, if you would please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I miss having our junior ROTC here giving us the presentation of the flag. We are going to move into adoptions of the order of the day. Board members, are there any items that you wish to move from consent to action? No? All right. I need a motion for approval.
Move approval.
So moved. I'll make a motion.
Okay.
Second.
I have
Second.
Mrs. Justice with the first and then Dr. Schiff with the second. Mrs. Justice, would you like to speak to your motion?
No, ma'am, thank you.
Dr. Schiff?
No, thank you.
Other discussion? No? Okay. Are you unmuted? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? 5-0. We do not have any presentations, correct? And those will start back when school resumes? Okay. Miss having those also. So we are going to move into citizen input. The public may offer public comment by appearing in person. We invite you to come and come and speak to us. But if you do not feel comfortable coming in and speaking to us, there's an email that we have set up, Citizen Input, June 9th at IndianRiverSchools.org, and we had posted that and asked any individuals that would like to send us public input to please email us by 12 p.m. today, and at this time we do not have any that we've received. So we do have 3 individuals that have signed up to speak, so I'm going to allow them to choose the order that they would like to speak, if you don't mind. We have Mrs. Cannon, Mrs. Freeland, and then Mike Murray. Is that the order?
Ms. Freeland's going to go first.
Okay.
Good evening, Ms. Freeland, and tonight I would like to yield my 3 minutes to Ms. Elizabeth Cannon.
Thank you.
Good evening, Liz Cannon. This is my final. Good.
Here we go.
This is my final speech as president of IRCEA. Over the past 5 years, I have learned a great deal and would like to impart some of the wisdom to you this evening. As a leader of IRCEA, I've worked directly with 3 superintendents, 4 if you count interim. Each brought to the table different experiences and different ideas. I have also worked with 13 different school board members. The pattern I have seen is one of which I would like you to be aware. Those who select a superintendent tend to have an unwavering belief in their words. Now, Dr. Moore has worked with us more collaboratively than any other superintendent, but we do not limit our knowledge of issues to only what he or staff brings to the table. We view many different sides of an issue before we decide a course of action. I ask you not to be faced with irrefutable evidence and merely take the word of the superintendent and staff as you did at our impasse hearing. As president and chief negotiator, I have purposely not brought forth proposals that were against the district's best interests, much to some of my members' dismay. I saw no reason to cause the harm to the district that has been my home these past 21 years. In the end, we are all working towards the same goal: a district that serves the students, employees, and community to the best of our abilities. In order to be best by kids, you must be best by employees too, since employee working conditions are student learning conditions. That leads me to my second piece of advice. In your mission to continue the millage, you faced a challenge to your local control. In fact, I agreed with our county commissioners who spoke of the legislature's absconding of all local control. This is much how teachers in the classroom have felt for years. I know my students, and sometimes what is in the best educational course of action has been removed from my hands. For example, I know that best practice dictates that intensive remedial classes should be no more than 15 students, but that does not necessarily fit into a staffing model. This is but one example, but we have felt the autonomy of our classrooms wrenched away from us for years, like the taking of local control. Remember to let the voices of those in the trenches have a modicum of local control. And finally, when I taught world cultures, I loved to pose a George Santayana quote for the discussion: "Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it." It seems that we are currently in a time warp reliving multiple historical events, from the influenza epidemic of just over 100 years ago to the civil rights protests of more than 50. The Black Lives Matter movement has great relevance in our district, as we have been actively under a desegregation order since those civil rights protests so long ago. The great controversy lies in two unnamed words. For those who oppose the movement, they see the word "only" before the phrase, as in only Black Lives Matter. For proponents like myself, we see the word "to" after the phrase, as in Black Lives Matter too. While this is an ELA teacher's dream to finally have such a powerful lesson to teach the importance of modifiers, it is also a powerful message to those who see the phrase with hate in their hearts. Believing that a Black man's life should not be extinguished with violence does not mean we condone the violence that has followed. But as I said, this is not new, and this has not been fixed by the passage of civil rights laws. Laws do not alter the implicit bias people carry. As we struggle to comprehend the institutional systemic racism that continues to pervade our society, we must use our privilege to point out the injustice and microaggressions that are used so freely. Hate still impedes our world, and the frustration of explaining it to those of us filled with privilege eventually boils over. As educators, we need to stand up and find ways to overcome privilege, to reach not just equality, but equity in our schools and in our society. My own ignorance and privilege have made me complicit with the injustice, but I choose to be complicit no more. For all the young Black boys who have passed through our classrooms, we need the world to change to ensure they will grow to be Black men in our society. To do this, we must see people of color as part of the rich fabric of our humanity and recognize that they are not all provided with the same advantages others receive. We must recognize our own implicit bias and vow not just to do better, but to be better. We must use our privilege to speak for those who are too frightened to speak. I believe Zerlina Maxwell said it best: "You keep saying that an innocent Black man was killed, but destroying property has to stop. Try saying it's horrible the property is being destroyed, but killing an innocent Black man has to stop. You are prioritizing the wrong part." As a school district, we must prioritize changing our little piece of the world, making sure we are serving all students with excellence and never denying that Black Lives Matter too. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Cannon. Thank you.
Mrs. Sork. Mrs. Sork?
Yes.
Excuse me, I have a comment I'd like to make. I just want to thank you for serving as the IRCEA president, and I wish you a lot of luck and success in working in the future, Jennifer. So thank you both for your service.
Mr. Murray?
Good evening, board members, Dr. Moore, district staff. My name is Mike Murray, President, CWA Local 3180. As Liz Cannon mentioned during her speech 2 weeks ago and during Dr. Moore's workshop today, the IRCEA and CWA came to a mutual agreement with the school district and negotiated very minimal insurance increase for the upcoming school year. We thank you. Our employees will be getting their last raise in July without an increase to take that away. I would also like to thank you, school board members, Dr. Moore and staff, for listening to our concerns about the COVID-19 epidemic and allowing us to work from home so we can remain safe for our families during the crisis. As Dr. Moore mentioned in today's superintendent workshop, there were many MOUs being drafted, signed, and implemented to ensure our employees are protected. I would like to thank Scott Bass and Michelle Oak with working with us many times up until the last minute. Working with us many times at the last day of the MOU's expiration to ensure that all matters and concerns were covered before we extended it again. Thank you for allowing the final MOU to be extended until May 29th, the last day of school. This eliminated the need for over 700 employees to return to work the last 2 weeks of school just because. On June 1st, all 11 and 12-month employees returned to work with a staggered start. There were some bumps that were encountered, but due to the feedback I received from my executive board by many concerned employees and the countless meetings we had with Scott Bass and Michelle Oak, we're able to minimize the impact and had alternate plans ready. Dr. Schiff, I would like to thank you for your email about the recognition of our support staff. It was extremely thoughtful and appreciated. Many of our bus drivers, food service workers, excuse me, prepared and transported thousands of meals throughout our county, feeding our hungry children. We had custodians coming out of their locations to make sure areas were kept clean and sanitized, while families and students came to pick up their belongings. We had AC technicians, electricians, plumbers, and so many employees who came into work, but I only have 3 minutes. Remember, this is all during an epidemic. Now, I've told you before, I have no problem giving praise where it is needed, but I also said I will fight where I think there's things missing. Over the past few months, we have heard teachers, teachers, teachers. As you know, my wife is a teacher, and I have the utmost respect for them. But what about your support staff? We have over 700 support staff employees consisting of bus drivers, food service, custodians, teacher assistants, media assistants, nurses, maintenance, mechanics, and many, many more. Why aren't we being recognized? Why is there no support staff appreciation week? Why do we not have new employee orientation at the beginning of the year? Why aren't our teacher assistants and student staff employees included in the professional development classes? It may not be mandatory for their certificates, but wouldn't it be nice to be included? Think of the team building between them and the teachers. Dr. Moore, I know you're new, and this is no fault of yours, but I hope this can be addressed. I've worked closely with Michelle Oak of Employee Relations, and just started working closely with Scott Bass, Deputy Superintendent, and look forward as we continue to build our working relationship to make our conditions better. But I urge you, think about ways that you can come up with that will let our support staff employees feel that they are important and that they make a difference. If it wasn't for the many support staff employees who came in to their locations during this epidemic, the success of the school year may have had a different outcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Murray.
And I would also like to congratulate Liz. Without Liz Cannon, with her support, I think the CWA and the IRCEA have become extremely strong working together with the district. Together, we proved to the district that we can work together as unions, as Liz said, the other side. During the county commissioners meeting, when Liz says, you know, it's nice to be on the same side, not always on the other side. So I'd like to say thanks, Liz, also, and thank you.
we have a couple of board members that want to make comments, so if you want to stay in the room, Mr. Murray, I don't know who it's going to be for. Mrs. Berenborg?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Murray, for those words. I agree with you. It takes the entire group. And I'm sorry that the employees were not recognized. Usually, I believe they are recognized with Teacher Appreciation Week. So I'm sure Dr. Moore will address that in the future. I went around to all of the different areas that were serving lunches and breakfasts one week during Teacher Appreciation Week, actually, and visited them and thanked them and appreciated the fact that they were the ones that were in the trenches doing the work while others were working from home. And I'm sure there were others as well, custodians and maintenance staff. So we appreciate that. Mrs. Cannon, thank you for your service, for everything that you've brought to light. And interesting to listen to the patterns that you've observed, and thank you for that feedback. And I also like to say thank you for what you said. Your words are very important at this time, and you're right. We have worked with, me as a teacher, have worked with kids that I know don't have the same abilities to have access to everything. And as a school board member, I need to make sure that we allow that and we push for that, and we will do that. And so I agree with you, Black Lives Matter too. Thank you.
Okay. Dr. Schiff?
Thank you. Excuse me. I want to thank all of you for your comments, and I'm going to indulge for a minute. And because I'm not as good on the fly all the time, I want to repeat a couple of words that Mrs. Cannon has already heard because they were in an email, but I want to read them into the record. And I want to say, Mrs. Cannon, thank you for all your years of service to this district and to the IRCEA. And while we haven't always seen eye to eye, I have always respected your professionalism, your dedication to your constituency, and the acuity you bring to everything you've done in this capacity. While I've not always enjoyed being on opposite sides of the dais, I have enjoyed getting to know you in the various forms that's happened since I campaigned for office. I am looking forward to welcoming Ms. Friedland into that position, and I know that she will be an equally excellent advocate and steward for the IRCEA, and she will shepherd SDIRC teachers as well as you have, Mrs. Cannon, so thank you. Mr. Murray, thank you for your kind words. Thank you for the advocacy that you represent for people who, you are absolutely right, we do not always see as clearly and as visibly as we need to. And I second your call to include them in PD and other ways that we don't always. So thank you for always bringing that to our attention. I have equally enjoyed getting to know and work with you since campaigning, and I look forward to more of that. Thank you all for your service. Your dedication shows in all of the ways you go above and beyond duty to take care of your constituency in this district. Thank you.
All right. No other comments?
Well, I would like to.
Oh, would you
Oh,
like to make comment, Dr. Moore?
Well, I would have
Did
loved
you
to.
type it in?
I don't have the
Oh,
computer
okay.
to do
Well,
that.
I'm sorry, we're moving on.
So,
Go ahead. Go ahead.
so Mike, I hear you, and I think we'll be able to accommodate Jenna from the time that we've started working together. Really looking forward to building on the relationship. Liz, as I listened to you speak and had the opportunity to work with you over the last 5 months, those comments really lay heavy on my heart. And I say they lay heavy on my heart because I think of all the missed opportunities over the last 5 years not to problem solve with you. And Mr. Bass can say it, the negotiating teams can say it, some of the things that we're implementing and I'm getting credit for were your idea. So, you know, as we were struggling through COVID-19 and Mr. Bass and myself were talking, like, well, what are we going to do? Is I don't know, let's just call Liz. And it is a testament to your intelligence, the depth in which you understand this system as a whole, the priority you put in on teaching and learning and educators. So I don't have the fortune of continue, I mean, I know Jennifer will have you one building away now and continue to work with you. But I just think that so many students probably missed out if there was a lack of willing to problem solve. Have we debated? Absolutely. Have we discussed? Absolutely. But having that willingness to say, if you're in the best interest of children, and you are, and I am in the best interest of children, and I am, we can come to a synergistic solution. And I think over the last 5 months, we've had a number of opportunities to come to synergistic solutions. And you are an innovator and creative thinker and have a willingness to solve problems. So on behalf of this district, this board, and all the teachers that you represent, you have represented them in an absolutely outstanding way. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Cannon, for your leadership during my time on the board. I know you've brought forward several items that were always in the best interest of the students. I know you represent the teachers, but your heart are the students. And so I appreciate your leadership. I look forward to working with Mrs. Freeland. Always enjoy working with Mike. So I just want to say thank you for your leadership and your patience for us to get to where we are right now. It wasn't easy, but we're here now, and it's only going to get better. So thank you.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Okay, how did that timer down there work?
Scared the heck out of me.
Scared the, yeah.
This is the new timer that I was asked to operate, so that alarm sound is a little alarming.
Maybe there's other features.
Maybe we could turn it down. All right, so that was our public input. Let's move on to consent agenda. I need the approval of the consent agenda.
Move approval.
Who was that? I'm sorry. All right, need a second?
Second.
All right, Mrs. Berenborg with the first. Would you like to speak to your motion?
I just wanted to say thank you to Dr. Moore and his staff for answering all the questions so that this board meeting can go very smoothly. I appreciate that, and I feel very versed in what we're going to be voting on, so thank you for that.
Absolutely. Okay. Mrs. Justice,
No, ma'am.
any other discussion on consent items? Board members? No? Seeing none? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 5-0. All right, so let's, we are going to move into action agenda. We have one item, which is our public hearing and adoption of volume 20, number 1, and special update for coronavirus. Dr. Moore, would you like to?
Absolutely. On April 28th, 2020, the board moved approval to set a public hearing date to adopt new and revised district school board policies. The purpose of the revisions, new policies, and repealed policies is to be consistent with present practice and legislation. The policy change process was followed in accordance with Florida State statute under Florida Administrative Procedures Act, Chapter 120, Rulemaking and School Board Policy Bylaw 0131. The proposed policies are attached, Madam Chair.
Okay. This item deals with adoption of new and revised district school board policies. Dr. Moore, have you documented that the public hearing was properly advertised in accordance with state statutes?
Yes.
Okay. We now recess this meeting to conduct the public hearing as advertised. The public hearing is now in session. Dr. Moore, are there any written responses to the advertised public hearing to be read at this time?
Madam Chair, no, there are not.
Okay. The public is invited to address this issue at this time. Is there any individuals representing an organization or his or her own personal or public interest that wishes to speak? So the chair concludes that the announced public hearing on the adoption of the new and revised district school board policies have been conducted pursuant to notice, and that ample opportunity to address this issue has been provided to all. The board meeting is reconvened at this time. I need a motion for approval.
I make a motion.
All right, Mrs. Justice with the motion, and then Mrs. Rosario with a second. Would you like to speak to your motion?
No, ma'am, thank you.
Mrs. Rosario?
No, ma'am.
Any further discussion? Seeing none? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
5-0. All right, that was the only item that we have on our action tonight. We're going to move into the superintendent's report. Dr. Moore?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have 2 reports this evening, one of which is, actually 3, 2 of which will be combined. The digital learning feedback survey, as well as some survey results regarding the work we're doing around preparing for the opening of school for the 2021 school year, and then a presentation on the monthly update regarding the implementation of our African American Achievement Plan. Beginning with the online feedback, as you know, on March 13th, we shifted our practice, completely moving from a brick and mortar traditional learning space to a online digital learning platform in which we created, designed, and provided development for ourselves to move to that digital virtual reality. As an organization, we would like to seek feedback. We sought feedback throughout the process as we were problem solving, looking at very specific concerns in order to troubleshoot, improve the quality of services. But as we stepped back at the end of the school year and really wanted to capture the overall experience, so rather than just looking at one specific area in which we were problem solving because we knew we had problems, what was the rate of satisfaction overall in terms of the complete implementation of our online format, the platform that was created, the structures that were in place. So we pushed out a survey and we began to problem solve and reflect to continue to improve moving forward. What do we take away from this experience as we prepare for the upcoming school year? So we had 1,265 individuals respond to this survey. Looking at overall, I'm satisfied with the quality of education my children are receiving in their school. Over 88% strongly agree or agree. I'm satisfied with the communication and support my families receive from my student school during campus closures. 90% strongly agree or agree. The District of Indian River County has done an excellent job of adapting to the challenges brought on by coronavirus pandemic. 89% strongly agree or agree. The District of Indian River County has provided my children with educational resources and materials needed to continue their education during these times. 89% strongly agree or just strongly agree. The School District of Indian River County did an excellent job of keeping parents informed and supported during school closures. 92% agree or strongly agree. My child has adapted well, and is succeeding in the virtual learning at home. Only 73% strongly agree or agree. There are only 1,265 individuals completed the surveys, those who had access. So it isn't a complete capturing of the true impact of that virtual experience, but it is a good indication of the efforts that we put into developing and designing that that systems of support. Moving into the opening of schools, we are in a process in which we really need to continue to evolve and create. Once again, looking for feedback from our families regarding the reality and their level of comfort regarding their current understanding as it relates to COVID-19 and returning to school. What we have done as a system is look at the reality, look at phase 2, the requirements and restrictions within phase 2 of the governor's return to traditional normalcy. And we are going to plan what a opening would look like, giving the parameters defined within phase 2. We don't know if we will hit phase 3, which would once again be the last phase of returning to normal prior to the opening of school. So we want to be prepared with phase 2, and we want to completely inform our families of what we perceive that reality would be. One of the things that we'll be doing on June, I believe it's the 29th, the Friday before we go home for the 4th of July weekend, maybe it's the 24th, or it's the 26th, June 26th, we will be developing a Facebook Live session in which we will not only discuss what the reality would look like, but physically show what the reality would look like. We will take staff, put them on a bus, show them the health requirements that we're asking students to adhere to, what bus drivers will be doing, what bus drivers will be wearing, what bus aides would be wearing, so they can physically see what that reality is. We want them to see the cleaning regimen and the materials and equipment that we are using in our schools, as well as clearly understand the structure of how and what the frequency would be in terms of the cleaning throughout the day, as well at the end of the day. We want students or parents to know these are the procedures within the confines of the school day. So rather than saying flexible spacing or flexible seating, well, what does that mean? What does that look like? We'll show them. In maximizing space, using cafeterias during the instructional time, using spill-out areas, resource rooms, auditoriums, gyms to maximize space. Once again, we want to give a clear visual as to what that would look like. Show them the materials and the cleaning supplies, the sanitizing materials that teachers will have access to and students will have access to. Show them the requirements within classrooms in terms of sanitation within hallways. So very explicit based on our best understanding on June 26th. This is what we anticipate August 10th would look like. That then gives our community a month to plan and prepare, as well as the environment itself to continue to improve as we move forward. What we are doing tomorrow is meeting with our principals to begin to problem solve with them, receive their feedback. I mentioned it this morning. We'll follow a very strict problem-solving process with our principals in the design of the information that we will be sharing on June 26th. So a very structured, continuous feedback loop where we're providing information based on CDC recommendations as to what they would look like and how they would be implemented here to receive their feedback and continue to grow that requirement to pull us to a place where we're normed on what our criteria would be and then design what and how we would push that information out. In looking or preparing or having some data available, we wanted to begin to initially seek information from our community. So about 2 weeks ago, we had a Facebook Live. We informed our families as best we could at that particular time and asked for their feedback. This survey received over 3,000 responses in comparison to the first survey that I was talking about, which was just over 12,000. Here are some of the highlights from this, and not all of it is encouraging or good, but it is the reality and the truth. 55% of the respondents indicated that all caregivers are at work outside of the home during the confines of the school day. So it makes it very hard and complex for families to go to that A, B, or on this day or off that particular day. 51% of the responses indicated that they would be likely to allow their students to physically attend school daily while adhering to CDC guidelines. That's just 50%. In the event that modifications are needed to reopen schools to ensure social distancing, 38% of the responses indicated a preference of attending school physically on all days of the week while instituting 2 shifts during the day of maintaining small class sizes. 30% indicated they would prefer to attend school physically on alternating days during the week while participating online on the other days. So a lot of varying opinions regarding where students and families feel safe at this particular time. Most preferred disease prevention measures, continuation of promoting proper hand washing and techniques, temperature checks, all things in which we were planning for. The School District of Indian River County, wrong page. Over 55% of the response indicated that the reopening of schools as soon as possible, if necessary, to allow families and caregivers to return to work. 73% of the responses indicated agreement that health and safety measures such as cleaning and social distancing would lower the risk of contacting or spreading COVID-19 in our schools. So the data, if it tells us anything, is that we need to be very intentional on informing and allowing them a clear sense and understanding. And as we interpreted some of that data that we just shared with the team, that is when we decided, you know what, we need to design our plan with our principals as early as possible, push out that information, allowing principals and allowing families, to really understand what the plan is and what the plan would look like. So that is what we will be doing. We will be going down a path that ensures that we are prepared for whatever that reality would be. We will prepare for a Monday through Friday opening under the traditional times. We will prepare for an alternating day schedule, which would give us a little bit more flexibility in space and size. We will provide strict criteria on a school bus. We will establish all the criteria in terms of one-way hallways, one-way stairways, using or encouraging the use of a mask for all staff, for all students. Encouraging is the word there. Clearly define a protocol of how materials will be cleaned. I believe as we design the plan, it will be clearly communicated to all members of our community, affording them the opportunity to have a level of comfort when we return to school. Ideally, I would like to return to a Monday through Friday experience where our students and our parents can be safe when they arrive to our schools, and our parents can have a level of comfort with the restrictions and protocols and procedures that we have established to allow them to be safe. So looking forward to creating the plan in a very timely manner and then communicating that plan in the coming month. So that is a very brief update regarding what we have learned during the implementation of our instructional provision plan, as well as some data that is helping us prepare for the return of schools.
All right, we have questions or comments from Mrs. Justice.
Thank you, Mrs. Zork. Dr. Moore, when we talk about the future and some uncertainties as far as phases 2, phases 3, when we move through those, if we do, the other thing we know that is uncertain to a certain degree is our budget in the 2021-2022 school year. And we've been given a warning that to expect a cut in our budget from anywhere between 10 and 20%, which is significant, especially when a very large portion of our budget is salary, and we're serving students in classrooms. So what impacts do you see right now with these different accommodations to our budget? Has the state offered any guidance as to if they will be releasing additional allocations for any type of modifications that need to be made to schools or classrooms or buses in order to be able to meet that need?
So right now, the best answer that I can give is limited information, no clear direction regarding this is the amount of funding in which you should receive. Information just has not been made available. We anticipate receiving a budget that is as close to whole as.
this coming
For
year.
this coming school year, correct.
Okay. Will there be additional allocations for safety and health?
Not to my knowledge at this particular point. So some of the relief would come in or maybe even offset what would be a reduction for this particular year. So how the process that they would use to make us whole this year may include some relief that would be provided to us as a system, or the relief throughout the state. That is the information that we need to have to ultimately put the puzzle together for this particular school year and ultimately prepare for the upcoming school year. So as you know, we have Mr. Fagan and myself really intentional regarding of looking at how we are spending, developing a values-based budget system that ensures that we're getting the most out of every dollar. And I would be misleading if I said that we weren't able to realize significant savings this year moving into next year in terms of eliminating some of those redundancies, looking at how we spend discretionary funds and ensuring that each dollar is intentional in improving student outcomes. And those are discussions once we have a solidified budget on what those savings would be from year A to year B, which gives us a level of comfort. Of course, any savings we want to move to implementing that recruiting and retaining our instructional staff, creating socially emotional spaces and environments for our students, and create 21st century learning environments. So there's still a lot of unknowns when it comes to the budget, and we'll continue to work through that as the information becomes available.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Rosario?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Dr. Moore, I have a couple of questions, if you don't mind, sir.
Absolutely
Is
not.
this survey still open at this point if a parent hears or watches this board meeting and they realize that they didn't get to take it, or a community member at that point, if they didn't get to take it, are they able? What? Can you hear me?
No, I was just trying to get the appropriate answer. And the question was,
Oh.
is the survey?
I thought that was to me.
No, no, it was to Ms. Mack. Is the survey still open, was the question? They're closed. So they're actually closed, but just to give you a reassurance, we'll be pushing out additional surveys in the coming weeks regarding what we learn. I think every time I conduct the parent or the task force that meets on an opening of schools, we try to push out new information, and through that dialogue creates more questions, and then we push out additional information. So it won't be the last survey, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I appreciate that. There's a lot of people who have made, well, let me preface what I was going to say with this first question. Who created this particular survey?
So we did.
And
Through
we
the-
did, right?
We looked at a number of different resources and other surveys that were out there, and then we problem solved as a team and made them unique to our specific district.
Okay. I want this to be a testament to the work that gets done at the district under your direct supervision, obviously, and with leadership and with your cabinet members and everybody else who's involved in creating this type of work, because this type of work is what happens at school levels when you take data and you make decisions. Data-driven decisions are really the best kinds of decisions because you're actually using real information. And this kind of information has been, most of the surveys that have been sent out from the district, I have received only positive comments from community members and parents even some asking, where is the link to XYZ survey? Because I'm interested in filling it out. I want my voice to be heard. And I appreciate that. I really, I'm just one that I like surveys in general. I think we can really learn a lot from what is derived from the results of them. And this is one of those decisions where we'll use this information to make choices as far as opening school and what that will look like. And it will be in the best, for what is in the best needs of our kids, and doing what is best by kids, so that everyone, of course, is safe and well. And I appreciate that. And I just wanted to say that I think this is something, along with all the other surveys, that you might want to consider to add to your evaluation process. Because it certainly is something that I think is missed. And I know that this drives decisions. It is the reason you're not just, pulling out of a hat, hey, let's just do it this way. You're actually digging deep into the dynamics of homes and how it affects children. And that's how we're going to address it moving forward. So I do appreciate that. And I look forward to more information on what happens as a result.
All right. I do have questions on this. I tried to jot down my notes, so bear with me. So what I'm gathering, 3,000 took the survey. 55% of the individuals who took the survey said they work outside the home, so they would need caregivers.
But
that
both
correct?
caregivers live out, work during the confines of the school day.
Okay, so that's 55. Right here, I would have to take a look at the survey, but it was 51% had said they would prefer for the student to attend daily with social distancing and all the other safety put in. Is that right, 51%?
Yeah, it's split down the middle in terms of, 51% wanting to return physically, adhering to CDC guidelines that we would establish.
Okay, and then 38 said that yes, all day, 2 shifts. They're
Yeah, 30,
They're okay with that. And then 30% Monday, Wednesday, and then
alternating
Thursday and
days,
Friday?
right? Mhm.
So did they get to vote more than once on these?
Well, we wanted to assess a level of comfort. This survey started 2 weeks ago. Where we were 2 weeks ago versus where we are now is significantly different. But we wanted to assess what is the understanding or feeling of our community with an understanding of who would be filling out. The 3,000 is not a true representation of the entire community. But we understood that, but still wanted to incorporate that into our thinking and then really seek out and provide additional information where we know there was no voice or representation in terms of an online survey.
Okay, and then I see here 55% of the caregivers or the parents want it to return as soon as possible. What was that question again?
Yes, so, hold on. 55% of the respondents indicated that the reopening of all schools as soon as possible if necessary to allow families and caregivers to return to work.
Okay, so just from my initial look at this, what I'm looking at is we don't really have an overwhelming number that feel comfortable about coming back to school. Do we have anything on the survey that said, would you like to continue distance learning on the survey? Was that an option?
These are highlights, so,
Okay.
I just wanted to pull out in terms of the reopening of school. So when you dig down into the survey, if it was 51% that wanted, some wanted additional information as to what it would look like. Others were comfortable remaining in a virtual environment. So
what I'm seeing is 49% really still would like to stay.
I would say 25% wanted additional information, needed more information, so in order, prior to making a decision, other 25% would be considering that virtual. It tells us there is not a overwhelming feeling in terms of we're ready to go back. I mean, we say jokingly, parents want their kids, to go back to school. I think that is a true statement, but not at the jeopardy of their safety in terms of the conditions and environment. So I think the next best stab is to establish what those conditions would be in a very visual and clearly transparent way, push that information out with enough time to provide us as a system to respond to the feedback our families are providing to us based on a full and deep understanding of what that would look like. So this is just an initial set to guide our thinking. What we have learned here is we need to be, we just can't ask these generic questions and come to consensus on whether we should open schools Monday through Friday, full schedules. We need to vet out a plan as to what Monday through Friday full schedule would look like, what the restrictions would be, so we can make, we being the community, can make informed decisions based on a full and deep understanding. And that is the work that we will be doing in the coming weeks.
So in addition to this, what really stands out to me is that if we don't answer, if we don't calm the fears or answer the questions the way that the parents would need them to be answered for their students to come back safely, I just hope that we're prepared to have a large number of virtual students come in the fall and not be surprised by the number that don't return. So is there any way that, what are we doing to make sure that we have plenty of staff that's working on that right now?
Through the chair, we're trying to create that problem, to be very honest with you. I think we've done a good job of marketing and making a level and awareness regarding our virtual programming. We will be under the reorganization that will be coming to you at our next board meeting, pushing staff around to solely work in that particular area, not only in the management and coordination of that particular area, but above and beyond instructional support for students who choose to participate, local support for students who choose to participate in that virtual programming, and then really beginning the work of innovating and pushing that out to maximize opportunities for all members of our community to connect to the rich instruction and the enrichment of our instruction within the school district of Indian River County. So I am very excited about that work. Right now we're creating, we continue to market, we continue to enroll and do the marketing around awareness and make sure parents understand this is a viable option for you within the school district of Indian River County.
Okay, perfect. Any other comments, questions from board members? We have Dr. Schiff and then Mrs. Rosario.
Thank you. I'll be brief. I appreciate our need to prepare for all possible scenarios moving forward. That's responsible, that's accountable, that's what we need to do. That said, the context is we have absolutely no idea what it's going to look like a week from now, 2 weeks from now, a month from now. So as well as we plan and prepare and have these conversations, the environment is changing, I don't know, like every 10 minutes. So it's a little hard to predict. Of course, the best we can do is prepare for all these different scenarios. But I want to also pick up on Mrs. Rosario's comment about the survey and either reopening or leaving this one open or making sure that we do this at regular intervals, because the context in which somebody answered that survey last week may be very different than how they answer it 2 weeks from now. What we know is that we're in phase 2 of reopening, that there is a plan for phase 3 of reopening. We also know that as people are becoming less socially distant, it is possible that our risk increases, but we don't know what that looks like yet. So it's very hard to prepare for that. So I know you mentioned there'll be other surveys and other ways of receiving feedback. But I want to make sure that this is, and I know you know this, but that this is a dynamic process, not a static process, because the context changes from moment to moment, and we simply don't know. Inside of that, I also want to make sure, as Mrs. Zork was referring to, that we're really sensitive to, while we may be in what the governor calls phase 3 of reopening, and that may have certain conditions that attach to it, there may be people who don't feel comfortable with that. There may be students who are immunocompromised. There may be students living in homes with people who are immunocompromised. And whether or not they are legally allowed to go back to school doesn't necessarily mean that families are comfortable with that for a whole host of reasons. And so inside of that, I think we also need to prepare for the possibility that while there may be an opportunity for kids to come back to school, and teachers for that matter, to come back to school, there are many who may not feel that that's in their best interests for matters of their own health and safety and well-being. And so I want to make sure that we are equally preparing for individual choices along that. And what's difficult, and I know I have to do this often in my own work as a college professor, I have to prepare for both in class and I have everything online on online platforms. I work on Canvas. So all of my courses are simultaneously set up to be delivered face-to-face as well as on Canvas. And we may have to start thinking about how we do that for the students who are unable to be face-to-face, even if they are legally and physically permitted to be there. So I just want to throw that into the space. I know you're considering all options, but I want to make sure we are as broad as possible and that we get as much possible feedback about as many scenarios and unintended or unforeseen possibilities as we can possibly account for.
Absolutely, and I believe we will have a plan that is as flexible as the unknown reality in which we're planning for.
Okay. Mrs. Rosario?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Dr. Schiff is right, but there's the other part of it, which I am absolutely sure that we have talked about. We can go to all lengths to show how clean we are, the lengths of which we are trying to keep people socially distant and maybe even have extra buses on routes and so on and so forth. But the other part is the asymptomatic person, the child who may have gone to the mall or, been somewhere and maybe, or an adult who may be asymptomatic. The worries out there for parents can be so complex. But I really wanted to ask, whatever happened to the virtual school surveys? Did we ever get the results of that back?
Through the chair, we pushed out information marketing the opportunity to participate in virtual school. So I'd have to pull and see if what the numbers currently are in terms of growing those particular numbers.
Yeah, I'm interested to find out how many people actually shared an interest, because when those surveys went out, maybe we can reopen that survey. If those surveys went out and we haven't looked at the results, that might make a difference as to what other options Mrs. Zork was just asking about and how we're going to possibly address. And I know everything is fluid. I know that we don't know what is going to happen from one day to the next, but it's definitely something for us to consider, how to plan for the virtual school, who knows if we're going to have a boom in our virtual school, attendance, where kids will, by the groves, want to, or parents will choose to opt to have their child, transferred into that school. So I'm definitely interested to hear the results of that survey. Also, can you share a little bit, Dr. Moore, right now, what is the difference between virtual school in our virtual school as a school option versus what parents are doing right now?
Through the chair, it would be drastically different as we designed this virtual opportunity. It was on the fly, keeping kids in the courses in which they currently were at, creating support through Canvas, really ultimately in some cases building the plane as we were flying it in order to ensure our teachers kept the control and authority, because they honestly knew the needs of their students better than anyone else. In a virtual space, clearly defined and developed instructional activities, instructional lessons delivered on an online format, classroom sessions, feedback provided, video conferencing, as well as phone teleconferencing with a particular teacher. The structures are clearly established. So I think what we did clearly gave a good understanding as to what it would be like to be in a virtual environment. Canvas isn't an online platform for a virtual school. It helps you load activities and assignments. So we were stretching the use of Canvas as an LMS as best as we could, so the use and familiarity of some of the platforms online, traditional online learning would support, would ultimately ease the process for students.
So is there a live teacher on the other side of the screen
Absolutely.
in the virtual school?
Through the chair, absolutely.
So the students are not going to pull up something that says, well, they will read and do, but there is a live teacher, unlike what they are experiencing now. So for those parents who might be interested in having their child still remain at home, but be a virtual school student, they can actually get instruction, quality instruction by a highly qualified instructor and still be a district student. I mean, a registered district student. It's not with anybody else but Indian River County School District.
Through the chair. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Mrs. Rosario?
Yes.
For the school district, I know that you're a homeschool mom, but as a district mom, our classes ended on May 28th, so we're not in class right now as a parent, but
Did I say that they were in class now?
but we did have as a parent, I did have the classroom teacher also that called and talked to my kids and helped them through the process during the distance learning. So I just wanted, I know you didn't mean it that way.
Did I say that?
I know a lot of individuals who have not experienced going through the provisional plan, they don't understand what was going on behind the scenes, so I just wanted to make sure that was understood. So no, you didn't?
I appreciate it. Okay. I appreciate that, Mrs. Zork, but I do know what was going on behind the screens. But what I'm saying is that virtual school in the like Florida Virtual or K-12, which was what was presented to us as a renewal of contract today, is vastly different in structure and in format than what students experienced and parents experienced during COVID-19. Vastly different. You cannot compare the two. And that's the point that I was asking Dr. Moore to express. So parents who did not like what they experienced during COVID-19 need to understand that if they do want virtual instruction, it will be incredibly different than what they've just experienced. That's my point.
So, and I respect that, so I'm trying to understand what's so vastly different. Dr. Moore, can you explain that? I know you just said that it was put together on a rapid response, but can,
Through the chair, I just think the platform intentionality would be what would be different. Individuals trained and made a decision to go into a online environment as an educator, fully committed and aware of the technology that they would be using in comparison to, surprise, you're a virtual teacher now, is significantly different and presents its own challenges. Not that we didn't stand up to those challenges and knock it out of the park in terms of presenting those challenges. So I think they are different because they are designed to be different, and they were created with different intentions in mind.
okay. I just asked that, Mrs. Rosario, because as we had a good experience with the distance learning, so I've not had the experience with the virtual, so I appreciate it.
A lot of people did. A lot of people had great experiences, but then you have other people who didn't.
Right.
Other people who have said, this is confusing, this is hard to do, I could never do this again. But then you have children who loved it, loved being home. But the parents just don't want to be the teacher. They want the live teacher in front of the screen. They want the live instruction. So there are differences, and it's important for parents to know their options when they are choosing a choice school. And so I just don't want anyone to compare the two, and it's incumbent upon us to express that so that they understand what their options are.
Okay.
Point of order, Mrs. Zork.
Just one moment. Mr. Meyer, did you have a comment you wanted to make to the virtual?
She's just here to help as needed.
Okay, all right, perfect. Mrs. Justice?
Yes, thank you. I think that Mrs. Rosario and everyone that's spoken has brought up some great points, and I would imagine that Mr. Meyer and Dr. Moore, given some time to be able to give an example of virtual learning and what it would look like here, could give a more comprehensive overview. Perhaps this would be better as a workshop item where we could have a broader discussion with more information being presented to us, because I do also, as a parent of 4, have questions, as I know many other parents do. May we move on, Mrs. Zork, to the equity update?
Mrs. Justice, I feel that we're having a very solid discussion here.
Oh, we
and
absolutely are, but given the importance of the conversation, I think taking the time to really have a thorough discussion with information being presented, and Mr. Meyer and Dr. Moore being able to be ready to answer those questions would be appropriate.
Mrs. Rosario, do you have anything else that you would like to say? I disagree to interrupt a conversation when we're having a discussion like this. I'm a little floored, but go ahead, Mrs. Rosario.
I agree that we are in the middle of a discussion that was really addressing exactly what Dr. Moore began the discussion on. So this was a follow-up to that. I think it's appropriate for us to have had the conversation, and I'm thankful that Dr. Moore has talked about it. He hears the board's questions and concerns, and he said that he will get the results of the survey, and I'm happy to wait on those results.
Wait no more. Hold on.
Thank you. Oh, you have them? Yeah, I appreciate the comments from the board members. Typically, I'm not the talker on one of these topics, but this is something very near and dear to my heart. I'm very vetted into understanding this completely. So I am asking a lot of questions, but it's very important that we know how we're going to move forward. So.
All right, so we had 2,123 individuals complete the virtual learning options survey. 443 voted. Think they would be interested in enrolling in virtual school, which is about 14% of the individuals who completed the survey. 68% said they want to return to the physical education in some sort, with 22% of that are still considering the virtual space. So when you look at 14% voting for online only, there is considerable need to continue to support and push around the virtual space, which we fully intend to do.
Nice. Okay, perfect. Sounds like you're doing a lot of research, and I trust that you are.
Absolutely.
Just, you know us, we always have a lot of questions.
No,
to
no,
understand.
absolutely, and this is
And
how you
this is
inform.
the first time that we've went through these numbers, so this
Yep.
is why we normally have these discussions.
Absolutely.
You know,
Yeah,
one-on-one.
it's interesting because that's quite a bit. I mean, if 2,000 people, and I'm just estimating, I can't remember the exact number, but if 2,000 people, of the 2,014 said that they are interested, and approximately 20,
22.
I forget the exact number, are thinking about it, that would give us 32 students total. Imagining that population, if everyone decided to do the virtual school, I mean, that's about 720 students. So that's a lot. I don't imagine that would happen, but it's still quite a bit.
Okay, thank you. All right.
Mrs. Berenborg had a comment I thought I saw here, and then I had another comment. Mrs.
My
Berenborg
turn?
commented at 7:03, no?
Okay. Yeah, having taught brick and mortar a virtual teacher, and I am still virtually teaching, it is definitely different than what we just experienced. So I do know that Mrs. Rosario is correct. There are probably lots of questions, but I know that with the item that we have before us, it was about school opening. However, without going to and belaboring this discussion any longer, I do think just like any other school promoting what they're doing, it would be interesting for parents to get a presentation about exactly how would virtual school look compared to what we just went through, because it is definitely different. I mean, I teach virtually, and I know it's totally different than what we're doing now. But my comment was more about we're not unique in this situation. And we're not just the only school district in Florida doing this. We're not the only school district in the United States doing this. We're not the only school district in the world doing this. And there are school districts that are already going back to school right now. And they're putting things in place. It's been very interesting to do some research about what's happening in other countries and how they're putting steps in order. Whether or not that's appropriate for our country, I don't know. But I also know that you're looking into lots of different things. And I think we're getting input from a lot of different sides and parents and their opinions. And I know that every parent wants to do what's best for their own child. My thought is I want to do what's best for most children, if not all children. And I know that not every parent's going to be happy with what we choose, but we need to be diligent in looking at the research that's out there, what other districts have already put into place that are already started to go back to school and what they're seeing. So I appreciate the information. I'm sure we're going to get more on this topic. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Mrs. Justice?
Yes, thank you, Mrs. Zork. I think the issue is so important that I think it deserved a whole nother meeting to talk about it, a workshop where board members could ask questions. I just want to thank Mr. Meyer for making the best out of a situation that I'm not sure, I would imagine he never thought he would walk into starting a new job. I'm excited to see what you have planned for the future for Indian River County. And thank you for just really giving it 100% and just coming to really embrace this community and make sure our students continue to learn. I know that it was a big task. Thank you. Of course. Please pass my thanks along to your team, sir. Thank you.
Okay, I appreciate it. And this is a very interesting conversation for me. So I would love to have the presentation of the differences between virtual and what we just experienced. Like I said, we had a great experience with the distance learning, but I would love to have that presentation, and maybe we can do it at the next workshop if it's not filled up yet.
Through the chair, I think my recommendation would be is to continue to work that plan. I think the presentation that we give to the entire community on June 26th will clearly define all options, the brick and mortar Monday through Friday, as well as the opportunity, if you're not comfortable with that, to explore virtual. And at that time, we'll continue to have more information on what that would look like in terms of what you were just exposed to in terms of the provisional plan.
Okay. All right. Let's move on to your next item.
All right, thank you very much, and we'll pull up the presentation. This is the equity update as it relates to the implementation of the African American Achievement Plan for this month. So we will run through, or not, wrong button. Always as we start, just a kind of historical perspective, what we've done over the last several months. You know, we have provided laptops and computers, hotspots throughout our community, making sure everyone had access. In addition to that, we provided paper-based packets to offset where there was a digital divide or just a better situation for that particular student. Schools administrators maintained contact with students throughout the closure of schools. We have been very intentional of providing flexibility to our teachers to use multiple ways of assessing students in the midst of COVID-19. And we provided a great deal of guidance and support and encouraging teachers to use those multiple ways to allow students to demonstrate mastery. When you look back at our timeline in terms of our African American Achievement Plan, monthly updates to the school board, the last one we did was May 12th. May 13th, we were scheduled to have our equity meeting with the joint committee, but that was scheduled. I'm sorry. We had the equity meeting, which was scheduled for May 13th, which we were very excited to offer. That had to be canceled. May 21st was an equity committee meeting, but as a result of COVID-19, that was also canceled. So what we did is push out information to the committee members as it relates to what we have been working on, the progress towards goal attainment as it relates to the African American Achievement Plan. So even though we are out of school, no academic EOCs or assessments taking place, there's still a number of progress points for us to monitor. So when you look at, well, what kind of data are you collecting when you're not in school or you're not in that traditional setting? Credit recovery, student recognition, course failures, grade point averages, student enrollment, screening for gifted, including Plan B, eligibility for ESC services, racial and ethnic breakdown for instructional staff and attention rate. So there still was a number of data points that we were able to collect. In looking at that data points that we were able to collect, you see there are some points of growth. Although they be minimal, you do see some points of growth. You look at the African American student GPA from this time last year compared to this time now. GPAs went up from 2.49 to 2.54, slight increase. If you look at the number of course failures, this time last year to this particular school year, you see there's a significant reduction, 1480 to 1062. It's not lost on me that a piece of that data set is influenced by COVID-19. So we need to take that into consideration and continue to monitor that data point moving into the future. The percent of students identified as SLD, specific learning disabilities, a slight decrease from 14.3 to 12.3, comparing May of 19 to May of 20. An increase in percent of African American teachers from 9 to 9.9, which is a very slight increase, a 1% increase. So that's maybe one or two teachers as a total. So that's a data increase, but it's not nothing really to celebrate. African American and instructional staff decrease from 1.3 to 1. So, you know, in order to retaining our staff a 0.3. Once again, nothing really to celebrate, but it's a slight tick in our data. We continue to implement the plan, maybe not necessarily data points available, but virtual data chats with teachers. Mr. Meyer and his team going through a very rigorous master scheduling requirement process. Yesterday was at Vero Beach, today was at Sebastian River, working with school site leadership teams, ensuring all students have access to the appropriate courses, and we're putting kids where they need to be in order to ensure success. Continuing to work with schools in monitoring graduation rates. Monitoring graduation rates isn't something that you do at the end of the senior year. It's something you do year by year, ensuring kids are in the appropriate courses. If you failed a course, how do you make up that course? Is there recovery? Is there forgiveness? How do we establish a GPA from a counselor's perspective? Scheduled information events with the African American parents, guardians, and students, advanced coursework, dual enrollment, scholarship information, strategies for academic success. So continuing to work even in the midst of this particular reality. Looking forward, there's a lot really to look forward to. First, as we spoke about minor improvements, we also want to look at opportunities for improvement. When you look at eligibility for ESE services, although SLD, which I reported earlier, went down a slight tick, overall eligibility for African American students improved, or not improved, went up by 1 percentage point. African American students screened for gifted services from 18-19 to the end of May, no growth, and still maintained less than 10 African American students meeting Plan B eligibility for gifted. So there are opportunities for growth. We did conduct an ESE boot camp, and a number of these issues were discussed within this session. This was a very creative and innovative idea. It was actually birthed as a result of a ESE Superintendent's Advisory Council, which is the opportunity for me to sit and conduct in conversation and dialogue with parents who have ESE students within our school. And this is something that we really thought was a priority. This was 3 days of intense training by our ESE support team, really to ensure our administrators understood the systems and structures that were in place to provide the highest level of support. Bring tears to your eyes in regards to the quality of service and support we were providing to some of our district's most important and fragile students. And I wanted principals to hear the impact that we are having on families. So it was an opportunity not only to tell the story, but to ask questions from a parent's perspective and gain insight regarding the work we as a district need to do to improve the quality of support that we're providing for our parents. When you look at next steps, we will continue to provide oversight and support for schools and students. Principals will continue to monitor course failures for iReady participation and follow up with individual schools as needed from a district perspective. Students have been identified, contacted for course recovery, laptops and hotspots still available for those students to participate in that summer programming. In our summer Illuminate 2020 extended school year virtual summer VPK course recovery enrichment opportunities is all getting ready to launch. 2 additional activities that are not on this PowerPoint but have been scheduled, both of which have been discussed before. On June 24th, which is coming up in the end of this month, is the opportunity for the Joint Committee, along with members of my team, to come together and really look at the plan itself. So you may recall when we presented the plan for your approval initially back in February, one of the things that we said we would do is come together and conduct a day of evaluation, a day of reflection, and a day of planned design moving into this new school year. So this is an opportunity not to work in isolation, but to work shoulder to shoulder in the development of what will be our African American Achievement Plan for the 2021 school year. As you know, you may think, well, this plan is already coming back to me. It just came to me in February. The plan needs to be approved prior to the start of school. So we're looking forward to establishing that with our principals, with our joint committee, collectively, shoulder to shoulder, to create a plan that is revised, which is modified. There's been a lot of learning. One of the areas that we know that we can improve is simplifying the data reporting process and making it a little bit clearer and easier to understand. The volume of data that we are providing right now is a little overwhelming, so we're looking forward to do that. Also, on July 24th is going to be an event that we initially had scheduled. Dr. Long was working on it, partnering with or getting support from Dr. Schiff, really having a day of equity in the school district of Indian River County. And when I say a day of equity in the school district of Indian River County, I mean opening up our doors. This is a week in which we'll have intense development for our principals and teachers leaders. Our Reignite professional development will take place Monday through Thursday. That will be high energy, high impact problem solving for each leadership team over the course of 4 days. You'll be receiving additional information on that. It will be powerful, it will be impactful, and I can think of no better way to end that powerful week of asking leaders of our community to come in and have a deep understanding of what the reality is as it relates to equity in our schools and in our community. So intentionally looking at July 24th to have this event, we will share where we are as a system. We will encourage community leaders to come in and engage and be partners with us in a dialogue around equity in this particular district. We will ask members of the community to come in and tell their story as to what it means to grow up in the school district and in the community of Indian River County, and what we could do collectively to make it a better place to grow and raise a family. So it'll be a very intentional day. In the morning, we will have workshops, we will have breakouts, we will really have an open and honest conversation regarding what our reality looks like. And then in the evening, in the afternoon, our principals will have the opportunity really to begin additional action planning, looking at the planning that they did with their school improvement plans through Reignite Monday through Thursday, really looking and being intentional around the equity work that they will be doing over the course of the school year, ensuring that we're not walking away from implementation of the African American Achievement Plan, but we are very, very intentional of coming to a deep understanding of where we need to grow, not only as a nation, but the role that we all individually play to grow this community as it relates to equity and ensuring that all lives matter, all children matter, and that we need to be doing a better job of being open and honest and coming together to be in service of each other, where we all can feel comfortable, safe, valued, and loved. That is my presentation.
Okay. Any comments or questions from board members? Kristen, my computer is not up, so yes. No? Okay. All right. Very good job.
Thank you very much.
Is there, that is your last item, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. We are moving into, sorry, my computer did die. Mrs. Berenberg, did you have a comment?
I did, thank you. The only thing I wanted to ask about was the GPA information. How can we compare GPA this year with GPA from former years when COVID-19 kind of changed the way our teachers were grading at the end for that fourth quarter and may have affected GPA?
Through the chair, I am confident that that last 9 weeks, COVID-19 had an impact on grades. GPA is the final grade is included within your GPA. So 1/4 of that grade had influence. So Did it have influence just as it did on course failures? Absolutely, and those would be data sets as we move into next year that we will continue to monitor.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right. Very good. Moving into, let's see, discussion. We do not have any discussion items at this time. Board member matters. Mrs. Justice?
Sure, Mrs. Zork, thank you very much. Tonight, I'm going to be sharing an article that was written in Lemon Lines. It's a weekly publication that goes out. It's all over Indian River County, so if you're looking for some positive information that comes out in the community, supporting things, you can pick it up. It's free. Russ Lemon asked me to do an interview with him, and I thought rather than this was given to me, and I thought it fair to share tonight. Lemon drops, why isn't justice running? Petty politics chewed her up and spit her out. Someone on Twitter accused her of having an affair with the superintendent. Of course, it was done anonymously and no proof was ever offered. The weekly must-read Vero Beach 32963 picked up the story and ran with it. Tiffany Justice, a first-term member of the school board, now says she regrets not sticking up for herself in real time. She vehemently denies anything improper happened with Mark Rendell, who left his position in 2019. The anonymous tweeter turned out to be a school district employee. Sadly, Ray McNulty's columns in 32963, which gave credibility to those salacious tweets, were delivered to her father's mailbox right up until he died in May 2019. Sorry. One can only imagine what it's like for a father to have his daughter's reputation smeared in such a public way. One can only imagine what it's like for a daughter to have her father read those things about her. To this day, no evidence has come to light that Tiffany Justice was unfaithful to her husband, Mark. They've been married for 16 years and have 4 kids ranging in age from 8 to 15. That's what's so maddening about all of this. Her reputation as a school board member was destroyed by an anonymous tweet that quickly took on a life of its own in 32963. It simply wasn't fair. Justice, 41, decided against running for a second term on the school board. It's a great disappointment of my life, she said. I really enjoyed being a school board member. I love and appreciate Vero Beach and Indian River County so much more now than I did before. She says the rumor of the affair is not what stopped her from running for re-election. What bothered her is that no other member of the all-female school board, Terry Barenborg, Jackie Rosario, Mara Schiff, and Laura Zork, came to her defense. Beyond the cyberbullying on Twitter, she was subjected to other intimidation tactics that come with the territory. For example, 32963 ran a rare front-page editorial endorsing Brian Barefoot in the District 5 race. Plus, there were public records requests akin to warning shots about seeking another 4-year term. I think that the school district has had an enormous amount of controversy and chaos over the past 4 years, and I think there has been an effort to attribute some of that to me, which I know is not true, but it doesn't matter, she said. I do not believe a divisive, contentious election is what's best for kids right now. I'm choosing my family. I firmly believe justice could have been a star in local politics. When I described it as a wasted opportunity, she responded with this thought-provoking question, at what price? I fully intend to finish out the remainder of my term, and I will do so with the same attention and intention and passion as I have served the past 3.5 years. I thank everyone for working with me, for making me a part of your school family, and I look forward to a very bright future with Dr. Moore at the helm. Thank you. That is it for board member matters this evening, Mrs. Sork.
Thank you. Who would like to go next? Mrs. Mrs. Rosario, Mrs. Barenborg, or Dr. Schiff? Okay, go ahead. Mrs. Rosario.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I am looking forward to having some free time over the next several weeks and really getting into the trenches of doing as much work in person as possible, keeping socially distant. Being in quarantine has been kind of challenging, and not having a child someone to watch my son has made it a bit difficult. But I expect that over the next several weeks, now that we're going into summer and things in our schedule have been changing, I'm looking forward to really trying to get some kind of normalcy back. So I'm looking forward to this summer and what is ahead. And I hope that that everyone else does the same.
Thank you. Mrs. Berenborg? Do you have board member matters?
Yes, couple things. I participated in as many of the fifth grade graduations that I could. Each one was unique and different, and I celebrate those students, and I also celebrate those principals and faculties that came out and supported those kids, because I know under the circumstances it was rough, and at least they got some sort of celebration. Attending Wabaso's graduation was very touching. It was a great job by staff for Plan B when the downpour came, and I thought it was a very touching experience, so I was glad I was able to attend that. I couldn't attend the peaceful rally that took place at the Sheriff's Department because I was out of town. I turned a big number that day, actually the day before. So I apologize for not being there in person, but I do want to send my support. Thank you for setting up an equity training, Dr. Moore, and a call to action. I think that's important for us to respond to what's going on. And I think we, as a school board member, it's our duty. And the millage, I am happy that it passed. I am happy that we prevailed, but I am not happy that we had to spend taxpayers' money to do so. And I'm not blaming our school board on doing that. The situation caused that to happen. And that's very unfortunate for the fact that money was spent to do something that had to be corrected. And I hope that people learned a lesson from that and that we can move forward from this. And I talked to Dr. Moore about ways that we can maybe recoup some of that money. And I know he had some ideas for that. So hopefully that'll move forward. As far as the comments from Mrs. Justice, I'm sorry that you didn't feel supported by this board member. I will say that sometimes when things happen to board members that are very, very personal, we have to be very careful, walk a fine line. I wasn't there, I don't know. I also talked to attorneys and made sure that I was following what I had to follow in order to be safe in respect to you and respect to the employee. I apologize that things happened that way. I certainly hope you don't feel like I felt that anything was going on with wrongdoing on your part. So my apologies if you felt that way. Thank you.
Dr. Schiff?
Thank you. I appreciate all the comments of my fellow board members. I am actually going to do something which is a little unusual for me, which is I'm actually going to read a statement into the record. As Mrs. Berenborg alluded to, I think we are in a moment of time that we cannot ignore and deserves recognition and acknowledgement by all public figures, this board included. So I'm actually going to make a statement about that. And in the wake of recent national and local events, I know many people don't know what to say or how to say it, so we're saying nothing at all, and I don't want to do that. So I posted something comparable on my recent Facebook page. I'm going to read it here as well, although it's slightly modified for this moment rather than that one. And I'm reading this. I obviously cannot represent the school board on this, so this is my own personal statement. To the members of our community who are frightened, hurting, sad, and angry about the events surrounding the violent death of George Floyd and others, I stand with you in outrage, dismay, and calls to end unnecessary police violence. To be clear, being anti-police violence is not the same as being anti-police, and please let's not confuse the two. Just like being against racism is not the same as being actively anti-racist. I'm grateful for many of the things that Dr. Moore mentioned tonight about how we'll move forward in this district in regard to equity and anti-racism. The events of these last few weeks have been devastating, and I have spent a lot of time in reflection and dialogue and silence and solidarity as I process my own thoughts and actions. And I'm not done with that process, nor will I be for a long time. As much of the community now knows, and Mrs. Barenborg mentioned, I was present at that first peaceful rally to end police violence and to honor the unnecessary deaths of Mr. Floyd and others both within and outside of our community. I was proud to see members of this community of all colors and backgrounds come together at that event. I was intentionally low-keyed and remained somewhat publicly invisible at that rally, as I did not want to make it about me nor divert attention from the members of our Black community who organized the event, whose voices matter more than mine, and who really deserve to be in the forefront and in the spotlight, not me. During and since that time, I've been on innumerable calls and webinars. I've watched videos, I've read material and other actions around this issue. And in light also of Mrs. Cannon's earlier comments, I want to say loudly and clearly that saying Black Lives Matter does not mean that other lives don't matter. Of course they do. It simply means that when some members of our human community tell us they're hurting, we rise up to acknowledge them in that moment. A longtime African-American friend and colleague of mine who has served as a county prosecutor, a juvenile advocate, and has had many other justice and education-related titles, recently wrote this to me in an email. She said, "I am sad for the too many sacrifices made to get us to this place, but I'm excited about the possibilities those sacrifices created." Just days after Dr. King's assassination, civil rights legislation was passed by Congress. I enjoyed the benefits in the 70s and of the sacrifices in the 50s and 60s. It feels like this is a time in history when we could finally and irrevocably balance the civil and economic scales for Black folks and others. As much as the nonviolent strategy of the mid-century civil rights movement exposed the unrelenting violence of Southern culture against Black people and their interests, we are witnessing the exposure of the violence of anti-Blackness that is baked into the very fabric of our society, and everybody of good conscience is fed up. It looks like change is coming, and at a great price, but coming nonetheless. Those were her words, not mine. I want to say also that when Mrs. Cannon mentioned, I believe, using our own privilege in support of children and others in this county, and I want to say that I will continue to use the privilege of this position to reiterate my ongoing commitment to rectifying decades of inequity and systemic injustice in our school system. As Ms. Mershawn Green, who organized that Sunday's peaceful protest and who is also chairwoman of our own school board equity committee, stated, it's completely unacceptable that only 30% of our Black third grade students read or do math on grade level. It's equally unacceptable that this persists through high school and that we graduate students lacking basic academic skills. It's also unacceptable that Black students are disciplinarily referred and suspended at persistently and disproportionately higher rates than our white students. All means all, and every single student in our schools deserves to feel safe, included, supported, to be and do their best. So just to be clear, for as long as I sit on this school board, I am committed to doing everything I can to rectify these inequities. It may not always look the way everyone wants it to, as this job comes with challenges and decisions and obligations that are not always internally consistent with each other, nor obvious to the community who's on the other side of the dais. But I assure everyone in this community that's what I stand for. I thank you, I stand with you, and we are SDIRC stronger together. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Schiff, for that. Thank you, board members, for a good meeting. It was a great day. I look forward as a board to move this district forward into a positive manner. We have a lot of great things happening, and I hope that we can maintain that focus going forward. I do want to mention before we close, this week we did lose another student. This student was he was diagnosed with cancer whenever he was in between the 7th and 8th grade from Storm Grove Middle. Brenton had 2 long years he battled cancer to the fullest. This past week he did pass away, and I just want to send our love out to his mother Mandy, his father Joe, and his little brother, and let them know that we're thinking of them, and that we love them. And I personally knew Brenton because he went to school with my kids at Storm Grove. So just a great kid that
He
we
was in my
lost.
son's preschool class.
Was he? Yeah.
It's a horrible, horrible thing. Go home and kiss your kids tonight.
So with that, we are going, wait, do we have one more?
I have nothing
You don't-
else.
Okay. With that, we're going to adjourn right now at 7:48. Thank you.